Yu-Gi-Oh! Is no stranger to gimmicky decks. We've got pretty basic gimmicks like being all about destruction, to slightly more lore relevant ones like needing to fly above the main monster zones in order to use your magic mecha suit. And then right in the deep end we have monsters that are painters but also blank canvases on which their effects are painted. Oh, and also they control the weather. Sadly, the more complicated the gimmick, the worse the deck is most of the time. If you need to go through multiple easily interrupted steps to do basic stuff your deck needs to do to work, it probably just isn't worth it. I mean, just look at Dream Mirrors. And sadly for weather painters, their gimmick is just a little bit too much to be practical. I'm sure anyone who's tried Master Duel's single player mode can attest to that. Yes, I'm still bitter about having to fight True Draco as weather painters just so I can get the lesbian icon in game. Which is why, with the new support, they just threw all of that garbage out of the window and went, screw it, let's have multiple Omni Negates. And well, we have a functional deck now. In the veins of old classics like Snake Rain, the Weather Painter Rainbow is one of those cards that looked potentially broken for ages, but would have needed a lot of support to actually realise its potential. After all, it can work as 3 Omni Negates and a Summon Negate, but Weather Painters struggle to get more than 2 monsters out at a time, let alone making a Link 3 with monsters to spare. And that's why they printed the Weather Forecast, a card which, no, is not a JJ's reference. It's one of those does everything cards which just fixes the deck while also changing it completely. For a start, it just straight up searches and activates any of your canvases, making it a lot more consistent when you just really want to banish one of your own monsters during the battle phase, just to bounce one opponent's monster. Also, it's a double summon for the archetype, which is good since Snow, their best main deck monster, only activates on normal summon. Already, this would be pretty good, but then it just goes and lets you use canvases as material for making Rainbow. And I mean, let's be honest, are we really going to miss being able to banish a monster to return a spell or trap to the hand? This makes the deck have actual meaningful interruption now instead of the weakest effects you've ever heard of, but if you miss being able to use the canvases effects, suddenly this card also makes Cloud much better. If it's on the field when you're linking away your canvases, which might happen thanks to, say, the extra normal summon, you will be able to grab 2 of those canvases back. And so that's how the deck works now. A single new card completely fixing a deck by being so ridiculous it makes the previous playstyle completely irrelevant. Oh, what's that? There were 2 new pieces of support? Well, I mean, it's true, moral support is important as well. And who doesn't want thematically appropriate cards to banish off of Prosperity? Anyway, all jokes aside, let's look at the deck. And here it is! It's a fairly standard build, although your favourite flavour of Floodgates will vary from person to person. I just went with what will generally be the most useful, but with a few options afterwards. Let's start with the actual Weather Painters. While Snow is the most important to start with, having any Weather Painter is still pretty important, so we ran 8 in total to make the chances of that quite likely, when combined with some other support later on. So that's 3 Snow, 3 Cloud, which is your second best option, and then finally 2 Thunder. Don't forget that Thunder can break you out of your own skill drain since it sends it at a cost. So if you're trying to climb into access code or overlay into a Zeus, make sure to try and get this out. Besides that, we run 3 Ash Blossoms and that's all for our monsters, so let's move on to our spells. You'll want 3 Weather Forecasts and a Terraforming, since it's the whole reason why Weather Painters work now. We also run 3 Snowy Canvas to try and get to our field spell faster, but if you already have this, you can also search the Weather Rainy Canvas in order to give you more materials for Rainbow. Dimensional Fissure is pretty free in this deck. All of your monsters banish themselves to activate their effects, so it's not like it will ever really be affecting you too much. Piraeus map is just 3 more copies of Snow, at the cost of half of your life points. Don't forget that you need to activate it at the very start of the main phase, so don't go and use Prosperity first, locking you out of this. Speaking of, Prosperity is yet another chance of drawing Snow, getting a second Weather Painter, or just choosing some back row to back up your board with. In most games you won't even notice to banish monsters. For your traps you run 2 canvases, Thundery and Rainbowed. Thundery turns your Weather Painters into removal during the battle phase, while Rainbowed lets you slowly gain advantage by banishing a monster, summoning another, and then getting the next one back next turn. Then we run 3 imperms for more hand traps, and then 3 skill drains. It doesn't affect us too much since all the Weather Painters banish themselves as cost, leaving them unaffected by its effects, but it does negate Weather Painter Rainbow's effect to give the others Omni Negates, so you'll want to use those first if possible. Plus Thunder removes this whenever you want, so you do have your own out to it. Finally, for some power traps, 3 Solemn Strikes and 3 Torrential Tributes both work quite well. You can substitute them for pretty much any other powerful trap though, like Judgment instead of Strike, or more Floodgates instead of Torrential Tribute. An example of what could work well is Anti-Spell Fragrance. You see, since most of the Weather Painters don't actually activate the canvases, they just place them face up, which means you'll still be able to use pretty much everything other than the field spell after having flipped this up. Necro Valley is also pretty good, being a strong floodgate that doesn't really affect you. It does need to be played after you've used your own field spell though, of course, and it does conflict a bit with Dimensional Fissure, so it's probably more of a side deck choice. The extra deck is nothing too fancy since most of the time you'll just be going into Rainbow. You have a little Xyz package of Fortune Tune and Breaksword to go into Down Nerd and then Zeus, helping you clear boards if needed. Since everything is level 3 in this deck, it's actually not too hard to make, as long as your opponent doesn't stop the second normal summon of the field spell, which if they don't know the deck well, they might not. Then we run 3 Rainbow and 2 Moonbow. Rainbow is the main reason this deck is doing anything nowadays, but Moonbow is pretty nice too, letting you clear up the board before going into an access code. Then of course we run the Nightmares, and then a Charmer package of Luna, Wynn and Ursa, since we run Light, Wind and Earth monsters, and can sometimes use these to link climb. So that's the deck profile. However, despite being a control deck that will mostly be reacting to what your opponent does, I do feel like a few replays could help give an idea of how to play the deck, so let's have a look at a few of those now. So now I'll be showing you a few combos, but first, if you've been enjoying the video so far, make sure to like it and subscribe to the channel. For this first combo, all you need is Snow and a second Weather Painter. Normal summon Snow to get Snowy Canvas, and then use the effect it gives Snow to search the weather forecast. Play it and then place something like Thundery Canvas, and then use its other effect to normal summon your second Weather Painter. You can then link them all into a Rainbow. It'll give you 1 Omni Negate when Snow comes back next turn. It's not too impressive by itself, but don't forget that you'll have 3 other cards in your hand to back it up. A better hand would be Snow, Cloud, and then something else you can play immediately. Again, start with Snow to search Snowy, and then that to search a Weather Report. Use Weather Report to get a trap onto the field, and then place whatever other canvases you have, before using your second normal summon on a Cloud. This time you can link away all 3 canvases for a Rainbow, which then triggers Snow to get 2 of them back. Now, not only will you have the 2 canvases to give effects to your Weather Painters if needed, but you'll also have 2 Omni Negates this time since you have 2 Painters. Finally, here's a hand that shows you what it all looks like when it comes together in an actual hand. We have Snow, but since we also have the field spell and Snowy Canvas, we can do things a bit differently. Weather Report will place a Thundery Canvas face up, then we can just play Snowy from our hands, using Snow's normal summon to get a rainbowed canvas instead. You can then use Snowy Canvas to search a cloud. Normal summoning it was Weather Report. That will make us both a rainbow with the canvases, getting 2 back with Snow before setting both a Skill Drain and Solemn Strike. Just for demonstration purposes, I show you that you can use the canvas effects even under Skill Drain. Usually you just keep Snow and Cloud on the field to get 2 Omni Negates on top of Skill Drain and Solemn Strike. So that's the deck. Have you been looking forward to Weather Painters finally being playable? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe. Special thanks to my Tier 3 patron, Distran, as well as my Tier 2 patrons Jason Murat and Violet Vane. The link to that is in the description. Thanks for watching!